Hi, my name is Marichi Fontaine from Drawing to Health, and welcome back to the course. In the last video, we were talking about basically generally talking about transport, what kinds there are, and what you would need and what you would need to look at cost-wise, and to be to pay attention to your environment, basically. So that's basically the last video. This video, we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of each kind of mode of transportation. So I have here a nice little list of all the types of transport, and I'm just going to be walking through each of them and listing the pros and cons of the modes of transport. Now, let's start by the first one, walking. Um, so let's talk about the pros of walking. Walking is, first of all, it's good for you because you're getting your exercise while going to your job. It's also very nice to be outside. Being outside is good for us. We hear all the time that we need to spend more time outdoors. Walking to your job can do exactly that. It's good for you for the fresh air. Um, you know, uh, you get to see your surroundings. You might even, encounter um, someone that you haven't talked with in a while, and you can talk while walking. So that's very nice. Um, but there's also, of course, some cons. Um, well, first of all, if you're someone who does not have a very good condition, walking might not be the best idea for you. Also, if you're someone who gets sweaty real quick, you might not like the walking as well. Because, you're going to need to have a change of clothes every time you go to work, and that's not very nice. Um, Also, if the weather is bad, it might also not be such a good idea to walk. And that's more because I know that most work environments do require you to look some sort of presentable, and if you walk in completely drenched, they're not going to really like that. So, that's a very big con. Um, oh, yeah, that's basically it. And of course, walking, although good for you, no one's going to expect you to walk for an hour. So this can only be done in relatively short distances. Um, Walking for 15 minutes to your job is 15. Sorry, I don't know if I said 50. 15. 15 minutes walking to your job is not such a big deal, but 50 on the other hand is. It's no one's going to expect you to do that. So only for short distances, really. Um, Yeah. Oh, and also a good pro for walking is it costs you literally nothing. It's absolutely free and is good for you. Um, so yeah. And another con that I just thought of is walking. Not for, most cities have good infrastructure and it's all very nice and easy, but you are pretty exposed, especially when dealing with traffic. Cars might not see you, bikes, again, might not see you, or there might be an accident, and you're walking completely unprotected, nothing to stop anything from happening to you. So it might not be as safe as a bus, for example. Um, so yeah, that's another con. But they're pretty even. So you know, that's that for walking. I really can't think much more of a pro and con. If you do, let me know. So let's move on to the other one. Bicycle. Well, a bicycle and walking are very similar, so they have the same kinds of pros and cons. Um, so the pros would be that it's good for you, it's eco-friendly. If there's nice weather, you can enjoy the nice weather. And if you meet someone, for example, if you have a buddy that lives close to you, you can bicycle together to your work. So that's all, very nice. Those are all pros. But the cons, just like with walking, you might get really sweaty. You might need to bring a change of clothes. If the weather is bad, well, you can't go on a bicycle, and it might not be as safe as other modes of transport. So the pros and cons are very much similar to walking. The only thing is a bicycle is much easier to do for long distances. So if you can't walk and you really do want to, maybe a bicycle would be an alternative option. But if it's very bad weather, that might not be such a good idea. So yeah, let's go to the next one. Car. I put in brackets carpool because that's also, you use a car, but you use it in a different way. But I'm going to talk about cars just, um, assuming that you are just taking your own car without anyone else in it. So the pros of having a car is the flexibility because you don't have to wait on any kind of schedule. You don't have to wait until the train's full or blah blah. No, it's just you get in, you go, and you can usually park your car pretty close. I mean, most workplaces have some sort of parking lot like right next to it. So it's just you go from point A to point B and you're at the front door of both in seconds. So that's very flexible and it's very nice. Um, Cars are, especially if you are someone who has to carry a lot with you, a car is perfect for that. Because in the train, you don't have, or a train or bus or whatever. I keep saying train, but basically public transport. Um, there's not a lot of room all the time. And so if you have to take a lot with you, you're just like kind of stuffed in a corner with all your stuff. And it's going to be very awkward and blah, blah, blah. In a car, you don't have that. It's just you and you have a trunk and you have all these seats that are empty. Again, assuming that you're by yourself, all these seats are empty. And even if you do carpool, usually you have a trunk where people can just put their stuff in or they can put it in their lap, you know. Um, so there's a lot of space for you to transport a lot of goods. Um, Depending on your job, this may or may not be a very big pro, um, but nonetheless, a pro. Um, Another thing, a car is pretty reliable. Um, you pay for maintenance. You are the one who decides uh, how late you go, so you don't have to like scramble to find a solution because oh no, my bus or train is not coming, or it's late, or it had an accident. No, you have your car, and it always works, mostly always, unless you have some sort of car problem. Which brings me to cons. Uh, the car, while very reliable and whatnot, is also very costly. You have to pay the upkeep of the car. You have to pay gas. Um, you have to pay taxes for the car. I mean, you do pay taxes for the trains, but those are like generalized taxes, right? And usually the cost is also in the tickets, but the car, you pay separate taxes. I mean, we pay two kinds of taxes. You pay tax for the environmental cost of the car, and that depends completely on what kind of car you have. So it might be very high for someone with a big old truck and very low for someone with a very economically friendly car. And you have another tax, which is the road tax, because, and that's also dependent on your car. If you have a very big, heavy car, it's going to put much more stress on the roads. So you pay more tax. If you have a very tiny little car, like I do, you don't pay that much tax. I have, I think, one of the smallest types of cars that you can get, and I pay very little road tax, but still, there is road tax, and you have to pay it no matter what. You can't be exempt of it. It's just you have a car, you pay taxes, so it costs much more than at least it might cost more for you to have a car than uh, take a subscription on a bus ticket or something. Completely depends on your situation. As explained in the last video, you really need to check for yourself. But it is like there's more separate things to pay. Let's just put it at that. There's more things to pay. Sorry. Um, Another thing, it's not very eco-friendly. As we know, cars are, a big source of pollution, and especially with all the congestion going on, which is also a con. A lot of people go to their work at the same time, so there's like a big ass line of congestion and no one can get anywhere and the cars are just running and keep on burning fuel. So it's not very eco-friendly. And another thing, and this was surprising for me as well, because I didn't know this, but it's actually slower than most public transports. And that can actually be very easily be explained as, buses have special bus lanes that they can just use to circumvent any type of congestion. Trains have special tracks that no one else is on. Same goes for trams. Bikes can usually use bike lanes, which are completely separate from the normal road, which makes them faster as well. So it can actually sometimes be slower than any sort of public transport or bicycle. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, if you carpool, however, this might mitigate at least cost because if you pay for a full tank of gas, you don't pay for the full price because you have more people also using the car, and they're probably just going to pay, at least I hope they do, they're going to pay part of the gas money. So it's not that much more expensive for you to go with the car. And it's, since more than one person is using the car, it actually costs down on emission costs since it's not four separate people using the car, but just one. So that mitigates it a little bit. But um, still not the eco-friendliest option, but at least, carpooling does help somewhat. So that's something that I needed to add because, carpooling is becoming quite more popular. Um, but it's not that much of a big deal that it needs a separate item. So that's why it's just in there. The motorcycle is basically the car, but it has an extra con and an extra pro, which is the weather. The same as the bicycle. If it's good weather, it's amazing, fantastic. You can enjoy the nice weather. But if the weather's bad, you have no protection whatsoever and you're going to get wet and drenched and whatnot. Now, usually with motorcycles, you have a suit that you have to wear, but that suit is not always waterproof, if I'm correct. So it might not really help that much. So yeah, motorcycle is basically the same as a car, just the weather. Oh, and also, many people have, there's a big debate whether it's safer or not to go with a bike with a motorcycle, and that's because you don't have the same kind of buffer when if you get into an accident, um, you're on the outside of the vehicle on a motorcycle. So if you get hit, it's far more likely that you're gonna get hit. But again, a motorcycle is also small enough that it might avoid a lot of things. So there's a big debate whether safety is better or not. I'm gonna leave that to other people to make that judgment. I personally don't care, but that is something that you might be, you might want to keep in mind. So let's go for the next one, which is the train. So nice thing about the train is that you can be nice and productive in the train since you're not paying attention to driving. You don't really have to pay attention to much other than just getting out at your destination. So yeah, you can just sit there and relax. You can be productive. You can also just look at the window if there's a nice view. Usually trains are affordable. Not all the time. I mean, if you need, I think the farther you go, the more expensive it is. But if you have a train that just goes to the next city, that usually is affordable enough that you can do this. There's also a subscription that you could take for the train, and let's see. It's also eco-friendly because a lot of people use the train, so the emissions of the train are barely negligible if you like divide them through everyone in the train. So it's usually very eco-friendly, and you also get the chance to be very sociable with people, which is also nice. Having a nice little talk in the morning. So those are all pros. There's a couple of cons. Let me start immediately with the last one. If you're one of those people who doesn't really want to get bothered in the morning, maybe the train, the sociable aspect might not be really a pro for you. So that could be a con then. Um, and well, speaking of sociable not being that much of a pro, um, there are times, especially in the morning rush hour, where there's lots of people, and I really do mean lots, and it can feel like sardines in a can, right? You're all just squished together, and it's uncomfortable and hot, and ugh, no, you might not like that. Another con is trains and buses. Uh, I've found especially trains have a tendency to either be late or they don't show up, and that can be because of a serious accident, but it could also be, I mean, it could be because of the snow or because of leaves on the track, and then the train cannot ride. This is actually a thing that happens in the Netherlands. Sometimes the trains do not ride because there's leaves on the track, so and then what? Then you're kind of stuck. So they're susceptible to that kind of thing, at least here in the Netherlands. They are. But that also makes them late quite a lot of times. So that's a con. That's a very big con, especially if you're in, last train and it's late and then you're like, I need to get to work. So it's not a good idea. Also, train tickets can be a little bit of a disaster, depending on what kind of provider you have. Um, Also, the fact that there's like different providers. I'm just going to take the example in the Netherlands because that's the one that I know of. But there are two providers of trains at the station in my city, and the switch was made, well, now quite a while ago. But when they first made the transition of having two, well, apparently I checked in with the wrong provider, and I didn't know, and I almost got fined for it, except for that the guy was like, he could see when I last checked in, and it was months ago. And I told him, like, hey, I have no idea what's going on. I didn't even know this was different. He's like, yes, this is a different provider. I'm gonna let you go now because you made an honest mistake, but next time be careful. And it's idiotic because nowhere did it say that there was a different provider. It was just there all of a sudden. Um, so it's like a bureaucratic stupidity, really, because I checked in. I checked in as I should. I got into the train all good. And then because it's not the right provider, then it isn't like, it's not valid, which is stupid because I did pay the money now. I paid the money. I had to pay anyway. Like, there's money on the card, and I checked in. So in the next station, I had to check out, and the money was gone anyway. So it's stupid bureaucratic stuff. So that's also a con. You need to pay attention. At least here, you do need to pay attention that you pick in the right provider because otherwise you might get fined. And not only do you lose the ticket, but you also get an extra fine. And it's really stupid. But that's the way it is. So it might be a little bit of a bureaucratic stupidity going on. So that's another con. Um, yeah, and as I said, there can be lots of people, and that's not everyone's cup of tea. Also, accidents do happen with trains. Um, might not be a very nice thing to witness, but then again, that could happen with any mode of transport. So listing that as a con is not really fair. So never mind, I said that. Let's just move on with the next one. Bus. The bus. Okay, so the bus. Um, the bus and the train are very similar. The only thing is that trains usually go from station to station, and they skip a lot of parts. It's usually for for far away places. For example, I know that it takes half an hour for me to for me to go from this city to the next one. It takes half an hour, 20 minutes, something like that. With a train, it's 10 minutes, so it's much faster. However, there's a lot between this city and the next that is missed by the train. Now, the bus doesn't have that because it has multiple stops. So, um, there's more places that you can visit with the bus. So that's a pro. Um, Again, you can be productive in the bus. You can, I don't know many buses who have that, but you could, sit on your phone and do some stuff. You could listen to music. You could do all kinds of other things since you're not driving. The only thing is that you do have to be somewhat slightly aware of what's going on around you because you might miss your stop otherwise. But if you go to the end of the line anyways, it doesn't matter, because it stops and then it really stops for a while, so you'll notice. Um, Again, since it's public transport, it's eco-friendly. Um, the more people you put into one mode of transport, the more eco-friendly it is in reality. Um, so it might not be as eco-friendly as a train because trains, I think, run mostly on electricity. No, wait, they do use some engine, but they also use electricity to guide them on the rails and get all kinds of extra things. So they use kind of both. The bus does use only gas. So the train, I think, wins out a little bit. But it's still much more eco-friendly than a car, for example. So it's still good. Another pro is that the bus is pretty safe, just like the train. It's made out of sturdy materials, and buses usually follow bus lines, so there's not a lot of other traffic that could just, interfere with the bus. So it's not as bad. Some pros: buses can be late, and you're stuck to their schedule. If like I've known some friends from when I was in school that they would have to either take they had two buses they could take. One would be half an hour early to their class, and the other one would be 5 minutes late. And so they can't be late, so they had to go early, and the scheduling sucked for them. So that is a bit of a con. You have to stick to their schedule, and you can't really do much else. Another con is that tickets cost quite a lot of money. Now, if you only have to go one stop further ahead, it doesn't cost that much. But if you go to the end of the line, it's the full ticket price, and depending on your provider, that could be quite a lot. Another con is buses are not the biggest things. I mean, yeah, they're big, but on the inside, you're sharing it with a lot of people, and I'm sure you have had to sit to someone next to a bus, and you're like, oh no, I don't want you to sit next to me, but you have no choice. Buses are very small in that aspect that you have to like sit right next to someone, and you're usually almost touching or touching. Not everyone likes that, so that's a con. So yeah, and it has the same thing as like the train, that it's, you have a nice view and all that, and but also bureaucracy and schedules and blah blah. So it's basically the same as a train, just a little bit different. But yeah, so they're very similar. Now come to other modes of transport that are very occasional. Not every city has these, and I'm talking about trams and metros. They're two different things. I realize that, but I put them together because of the fact that not every city has these. The area that I live in does not have trams or metros at all. I think that's a very big area of country here that does not have any of that. Only in the West. I've at least I've only seen it in the West, trams and metros. So that's why I put them together as sort of last. So let me start with tram because that's first. The pros of a tram. Trams are usually very cheap, much cheaper than a bus. They're also very quiet. At least they don't make as much sound as a bus. For example, the engine and the fucking honking and the whatever. It doesn't make that much noise. It's very quiet. It's very eco-friendly because it uses electricity to move itself. No gas, absolutely no gas. It's just electricity. So it's very eco-friendly. At least if the electricity is sourced uh, from an eco-friendly source, then yes, it's very eco-friendly. If not, not as much, but still better than gas. So that's something, and it's very convenient. Trams are usually very convenient in that because they have separate tracks, they also have separate stops. And there's not a lot of traffic that interferes with trams because trams usually have the right of way in pretty much any situation. So it's very fast, very convenient. You just wait, you get in, and they go. It's very, very quick, very easy. And Yeah, they're for the most part they're safe, as in since traffic doesn't interact much with a tram, usually everything goes fine. Usually. Getting to the cons now, I said usually because sometimes it does happen that a car does not see the tram or, something like that, and then an accident happens. Now, when an accident does happen with a tram, the tram is not as sturdy as, say, a bus or a car. So it can hurt the driver or any of the people sitting in there because the tracks are not that deep as well. So it might actually get off its tracks. Another thing is, if the driver's not paying attention, the tram, since the tram is operated by a driver and that says it to go or stop. If the driver's not paying attention, it might just go the entire time and just push the car forward, which is not a very good thing to have. So that makes it a little bit unsafe, I suppose. But then again, there's barely any traffic that really interacts with a tram, so it's both a pro and a con. It's kind of difficult. Um, but for like true cons, let's see. Well, if the tracks get blocked, trams cannot drive. Since the tracks are very like they're in the road, that's usually a good thing because it's easy for trams to just go along their tracks. But if something's stuck in them and they derail, it's a big mess. So if it's blocked, it cannot drive. No tram can drive, at least not on that part of the tracks. And you best hope it's not on a junction because then nothing drives. Um, Another thing, well, I've already talked about it not being sturdy. Also, the fact that it runs on electricity is for the most part a con. However, if there's a power outage, trams don't drive. In fact, they actually might get stuck in the middle of the road. So that's not a good thing. Also, they are very reliant on the wires above the trams. That's where they get the electricity from. If the wires get damaged, the trams cannot drive. So you'll have to wait until that gets fixed, and that can take a while. So that's a con. I mean, electricity is very good, very nice, but we're not at the point that we always have electricity. There's still power outages happening. And with, you know, these big trams, um, it's not good. It's not that, it's not perfect, but then nothing is, you know, but it's something to keep in mind. If you live in a city where there's a lot of power outages, but there is a tram, is it a good idea to go on a tram? So that's all I can think of trams. Now let's go for metros. Metros are also affordable. They're usually very safe since they're underground. They have absolutely no um, interference from any kind of transport. There's no trams, no cars, no bikes, no people walking there. Nothing. It's just a metro. That's it. That they have the right of way all the time, every day. So it's very safe. They're also eco-friendly because, like trains, they transport a lot of people into one car, and it's very nice. They're also very convenient because usually they work like trains in that aspect that you just check in, go into the metro, whoop, and you're in another part of town without any delays or whatnot. At least I've never seen a delay with a metro because there's nothing to delay it. All the tracks are underground. They're usually in a like a protected environment. Um, if there is something to happen, there's like a billion escape routes. So they're usually, pretty safe and convenient. Um, there are some downsides though. The metros make a lot of noise, and it can't be held because that's just the way that works. The tracks make noise, and because of the enclosed environment, it just echoes incredible amounts. So it's going to be very noisy. Now, if you're the type of person who does not mind, or you have good earphones that just cancel all the noise, perfect. Then that's not going to bother you, but it's noisy. It's very noisy. Also, there's a lot of people in the metro. A lot. I've never seen it not be busy. So metros are very crowded. If you don't like big crowds, don't go into the metro. It's not gonna be a fun time. Another thing about metros is they do have heightened criminal activity. There's because it's underground, especially going through these dark tunnels. Criminals do have more opportunities to do some bad stuff. So that is a thing to be mindful of. Don't transport um, you know, goods on a metro. It's not going to end well. Um, Another thing is metros are actually not very hygienic. Um, Seeing as that not a lot of people go down there and there's a lot of criminal activity, that also means that, or not a lot of people, like the police don't easily go down into the metros. The cleaning crews also don't go down into the metros that much. But it's just, since a lot of shitty things could happen there, that also means that um, the how do you say this? The signs of what happened there usually stay there for quite a while. You might find some gross stuff in there. It's not that hygienic compared to the other ones, which are above ground and everyone can see you, right? In the metros, not really. So that might be a thing to think about. Um, do I have any more? No, I think that's pretty much it. I've been talking for like half an hour, so I hope you got all of that. If not, you can always rewatch the video, of course. Um, so thank you very much for watching. The next part will be about basically using the type of transports. Um, we have an app here in the Netherlands where we can check for trains and buses. So I'm going to be explaining that because I think by now there are more countries who use that. So I'm just going to explain how ours works. I'm also going to be explaining about Google Maps and how to plan your route the best. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.